Good afternoon, everyone. As usual, I'll just give a couple of minutes, probably 1 or 2 minutes, to allow you guys to come in before we start the business of the day. It is noon, Tuesday. How has your day been? Those on break, those working remotely, and those caught up in traffic. How are you guys doing? Hope things are moving on smoothly. Today is indeed a good day, and hey, promise you guys will enjoy our presentation today. And I can see a couple of familiar names on my attendees list here. You guys are welcome once again. I think I'll just take it up even as people keep joining us. Good afternoon once again and welcome. For those of you guys that are joining us for the first time, my name is Gagba Esahaya and I'm the training coordinator of the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple Small Business Development Center helps small business start and grow. We offer free one-on-one consulting and a variety of low to low cost webinars. We are proud to be part of the nationally accredited network of the Small Business Development Centers, which has over 1,000 networks across the United States. We are here this afternoon for a webinar on web technology, what you should know about. A copy of the PowerPoint and a link to the recording will be sent to all the attendees. Being a webinar, all the attendees have been muted. However, we always encourage you guys to drop your questions on the Q&A or the chat box. Just like I said earlier on, that today is indeed a good day. And part of the main reason why I said that is because we have a great speaker. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome Jane, even as she takes over the floor for the presentation. Jane, you're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, has anyone taken any of our other webinars? Let us know in the chat. We're just curious. I think the last one I did was about website security, one of my favorite topics. So yes, I'm Jane Clark, and today we're going to learn about website technology that you should know about. A little bit about me. I'm the co-founder and creative director of Brand Swan. We do beautiful brands, savvy websites, and marketing that matters. I'm a multidisciplined graphic designer, and most importantly, I'm a front-end web developer. I've been designing websites since the 90s. Trust me, it's true, almost 20 years. And I specialize in brand strategy, web design, and SEO. And this is when the IT and web lines start to blur because there is a lot of technology involved in this. So what we're going to cover today is the parts of a website, where to register your domain name, how to choose a web host, and SSL certificates and why they're important. So let's talk about what makes up a website. Now, there's a couple different analogies I like to use. This one I feel like is great with people 40 up to kind of understand how your website works and all the moving parts. So think of your domain name as like the card catalog in a library. It tells you where the book is located in the library. That's your domain name. And the book on a shelf is your website, and the shelf is the hosting account. And for most websites, you're using a shared hosting account, and you share that hosting account with a lot of other websites. So that's sort of a good analogy I like to use. So the domain name is the card catalog, the shelf is your hosting account, and the book on the shelf is your website. Here is a little bit of a diagram on what makes up the website and how they're all related. So you have your domain name, and there are two parts of that domain name. The first is the domain registrar. Now, this is where you originally bought the domain name, and this gives you the keys to the car. This is the master key. So no matter what you do, you can always come back to your domain registrar and tell it what to do. So if you no longer want the instructions to go to this hosting account, but a different hosting account, you can do that. Then you have something called domain control. And this is where your name servers are, where your domain records live. So for example, you can have a domain name bought at one library, but the records on that domain in another library. So there's some reasons for that I'm not going to burden you with, but yeah, so your domain name and your domain records are in different places sometimes. Let's talk about the hosting and how that plays a role. So your domain and hosting account are most likely going to be at separate companies. And I think it's because, well, I have a preference. It doesn't matter too much if you decided to go with a host at your registrar. Not all registrars do hosting, but let's say you are all using GoDaddy. You might have your domain there and your hosting account there. For me, I'm more of a solutions kind of gal, like problem solving. What are you trying to build? Let's pick the best place to build it on, because it doesn't matter. Your domain can point anywhere. So I definitely think you should buy your domain yourself with your name, your information, because then you own it for sure. If you pay another company like mine to kind of buy the domain for you, there is a transfer process. So if you're not entirely happy with someone's services and then you have to go back and say, hey, can I have my domain name? There have been some hostage situations I've experienced in the past. Just get your own domain name. Your designer will love you for it, and they can point it anywhere, no matter what you do with your web. Last but not least, you have your email hanging out here on the right. It doesn't really, the one thing it does connect to is the domain name. And this allows you to have a cool domain name like jane@brandswan.com instead of jane@gmail.com. So this is where everything can possibly live. Now, your email can live on your hosting account. Back in the day, and by back in the day, I know that's really like a random time period, but I would say maybe like within the last 15 years, you could get like free email with your hosting account. But that email has like a 100 megabyte limit. You know, you can only send 250 emails a day. Like there's just so many limits on it that in today's world with larger files and everything, it just doesn't serve you. And a lot of those email providers on the hosting side have contacted people who just do email, and they're really good at it. So for example, Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, they keep changing their name. It was Google something, Google Workspace, Google Docs, you know, G Suite, I think they ended up calling it at one point. So those are the two big players, and I recommend either one of those two, but I'm going to cover that further down. So this is just a general idea of how everything works together. It is complex, and if you're racking your brain over it, don't feel bad. It took me many years to understand this, and I do it for a living. So let's start with the easy thing, the domain names, right? So the difference, we did cover the difference between a domain registrar and a controller. And just to kind of rehash that, you had the place you bought your domain, and then you had the place where your records live that gives all the instructions. And those instructions make up things like, where's my email? Where's my hosting account? You know, where's my website? What's my website doing? And there's a lot of other things that you can add to your records, which is more SEO based. We don't have to talk about that right now. There's a reason why those places, they can live in different places. Here's some tips for you. Buy a domain from a domain registrar, not a hosting company. We talked about that, right? And pick the best email provider, and do not rely on free email hosting. Trust me, guys, you'll thank me later. So here are my top 5 domain registrars. And I'll go ahead and give you some pricing. Nala, let me know if I said that right. I don't think I did. Nyala sounds about right. So Google Domains, what I love about it is it has free privacy, which means it doesn't charge you extra to kind of hide your name, address, and phone number from the records. And I've noticed that a lot of these companies are following suit. They used to charge double the price just for the privacy. And because Google is kind of changing that industry dynamic, they're kind of following suit because they know that's what people want, and they will lose customers. So for Google Domains, to get a domain there is about $12 a year. So it's very, very affordable. Sometimes I get asked for, hey, you know, should I buy like 8 different versions of my domain name? My answer is yes and no, because you used to be able to get all these domain names for SEO purposes, and SEO stands for search engine optimization. So for example, I remember, again, back in the day, about 14 years ago, I bought all these domain names like Web Designer Delaware and Social Media Delaware and all that stuff to kind of help with the SEO. But that only works if you have the content to back it up and if it's like matching your company name. So it doesn't really help as much as you would think. So I wouldn't spend all this money on a bunch of domain names. You can be more strategic about it. The cool thing is that there are so many website extensions that makes life fun and creative. So, and just honestly, we're running out of names, right, on .com. We absolutely are. What I would recommend is stay away from .net and .biz. The reason for that is because from a branding standpoint, they give the impression of, oh, well, someone else had my company name, so I just bought the .biz or .net, and it kind of devalues your proposition, you know, what you're actually selling. It just makes it feel like, oh, well, it's already been done before. So I tend to lean away from those type of domain names. When you pick other ones, it just becomes more intentional, right? So for example, we got brandswan.design because we're a design company, right? You'd be amazed at all the cool website extensions out there. .realtor, .bike, .photography, .dev. And honestly, some of them have rules that you have to follow. So for example, .gov, you have to be a government entity. You can't just buy a .gov domain. .dev, that one has to have an SSL installed on it in order for it to be used. There's all sorts of fun little things, but also keep in mind, these are much more expensive. I think the .design one, we might pay $60 a year for versus the 12 if you get a .com. So keep that in mind. Okay, so if you let your domain expire, you're at risk. You never really own a domain. You kind of rent it for life, right? So every year you're paying $12 for it. But if you let it expire, and I've actually had clients, well, they've come to me with this problem. And unfortunately, if you let your domain name expire and it's on back order, people will buy it and then they'll try to resell it to you for insane amounts of money. So make sure that your domains aren't just going to expire. Make sure that you have a credit card on file and auto renews on. Like, just don't mess around with that. Make sure that the email address on your account is up to date so that you will get notifications. But yeah. So don't let your domain name expire unless you really want it gone. Example happened to me recently. I let Web Designer Delaware go. I'm like, I don't need that anymore. I'm already really high on SEO, and we just, it's not serving us, you know. And someone keeps contacting me like, do you want to buy this domain name? I'm like, no, I'm the one who let it go. No one wants that. Like, so don't let people make you think that they're trying to sell you something of value. All right, I'll take questions now. Let's see. All right. Nyala, I think I answered your question that they cost about $12, but depending on the extension, it could be $100. That is set by the person who made the extension. Cool. What is a CSR? I don't know. It sounds medical. Let me Google it real fast because now I'm personally invested in what a CSR is. Okay, I'm with you. We're going to talk a little bit about SSLs later in the presentation, and we'll cover that. Slides will be available after, of course, I always do. Is Square a hosting company? Yes, but you have to use, this is for Jill. Is Square a hosting company? They are. We are going to talk about different types of websites and how you go about using them. So you can't like take any old website and move to Square. You have to use their, Squarespace or Square, the credit card company, Jill. Square might, some companies give you like really dumbed down, like really simple websites that you could probably use for e-commerce. I don't know specifically about what they offer. We sort of specialize in more like custom sites and that kind of thing. Let's see. Regina, yes, when you purchase Wix, yeah, you can purchase your domain at Wix, but here's the thing, when you do that and you try to leave, they don't want your domain. They don't want to take your domain with you. So now you have to transfer your domain too. Just food for thought there. Yeah, Squarespace, yeah, that's a hosting company, but you have to use their software. Okay, Samuel, Network Solutions advised that I have to secure a SR to move my domain name from Squarespace to them. I don't care for Network Solutions, but if you buy an SSL, like all that's taken care of. You don't like the CSR is more like they're asking you to manually install like your SSL, which seems a little unnecessary. I would need to know more about that, but Usually that kind of just happens and you don't have to worry about it when you install it. Also, there's a lot of providers that offer free SSLs like SiteGround. All right, I'm going to move on here and hopefully this will answer some of your questions, guys. All right, so how do you choose between a website builder or a custom CMS? Now, a CMS stands for Content Management System, which is why we call it CMS. And it's just a fancy way of saying you can log into your website and make changes without any knowledge of code and how that works. So the way I go about picking a provider is start with your must-have features, of course, right? So what do you want your website to do for you? And then think about if your CRM supports that. So if you're an e-commerce driven company, you're going to want to pick the site that's the best for e-commerce. And I have some ideas for you there too. So let's talk about how to pick the platform. So no matter where your website lives, it's a digital environment, right? And it's capable of doing such awesome things. And it's all really built with software. So number one option is the custom code by a programmer. So let's say you go to a provider and you're like, hey, I really want a website. And they're like, okay, we're going to code it for you. Here's a proof. You have to, all changes have to go through the developer because they coded it in HTML. Well, that's what it comes out to be. PHP or a code that you probably wouldn't know unless you went to school for it. So therefore, you're kind of incapable of making your changes. If that makes you happy and you have no desire to kind of work on your own website, that's a great idea, especially if you want your website to do something that's out of character for most websites, like building a custom application, things like that. Then we have a simple CMS. I'm going to call them website builders because all CMSs they have their own builder built in. That was redundant, sorry. But we're going to call these website builders. And website builders implies a very simple experience, maybe not a whole lot of capability, but things have really come a long way since this was initially introduced. So these simple CMSs, like they include Squarespace and Wix, and although they might have and different companies have, their signature style. So for example, Squarespace, they have beautiful designs and that's sort of what they're known for, beautiful white, clean designs. Wix is a bit more functional. It has more stuff you can do. It tends to be better for bigger web pages. Now, when you go with them, they take care of hosting for you because you're using their proprietary platform. Moving on to a custom CMS like WordPress, Joomla, Magento. These require a certain amount of computer savviness to put together, but once you do put it together or you have a developer put it together, you can then go in and make your own changes. It also allows for more powerful integrations. And there are certain things you can integrate. For example, you could use a third-party application like Calendly to allow people to book through your website. So that's a really cool feature, and you don't have to have a custom CMS for that unless you wanted it to be right in your website, super branded, super seamless. Otherwise, it's probably just going to take you to a new window, a new website to kind of finish that transaction. So I'm not saying you can't do any type of so I read a question before I should have, and I lost my train of thought. Shopify, Jill, is considered a website builder, and it's great for e-commerce. One last thing about simple CMSs is that they do include the SSL, and they're all mobile friendly. So you're really just working with like a limited amount of templates. You make some changes, and you're kind of good to go. It's very easy to set up. They do take care of that burden for you. Now, the thing is like if you decide to move, you have to rebuild your website. You can't just take your website and take it with you somewhere. You have to rebuild it because again, no one else has their platform but them. All right, so let's talk about web apps. And this is what makes your website do cool stuff. And like I said, all websites should be mobile friendly and SSL friendly. If they don't, then they're not up to snuff, basically. So here's all the cool things that you can have your website do for you. Event calendars that people can register for, membership websites, galleries, video players, booking systems, lead capturing forms. So if you want someone to kind of be able to give their email address, and then they download something, and now you have that lead. Contact forms, quote forms, search features, appointment schedulers, online quizzes and polls, security and backups, blogs, social media feeds sort of embedded in there, tracking your effectiveness of your Facebook campaign. Really, if SEO is important for you, using like a WordPress would be wonderful for that. There are plus and cons for all the platforms. So again, start with what is absolutely critical for your audience's user experience, and then start narrowing it down. All right, I'll take more questions at this time if you guys have them. Hi, Nicole. I need major help with creating a website and all the information that you're providing. Do you help with this, or can you refer a reputable company? Yes, absolutely. If you are past the point where you want to do it yourself, you've gathered all the information, just go there, make a free consultation, a discovery call, and we can talk and guide you from there, even if it's not us. Thank you, Nicole. Sean, is WordPress a website builder? And if so, does it allow for those integrations? Yes, we call WordPress a custom builder, but it is a builder. The thing with WordPress is that it's sort of like this beautiful foundation. And then on top of that, you can pick your theme, which is the overall look of your site. And you can add plugins, which is giving it all the functionality of a cool website. So in a perfect world, you would use WordPress. And I will actually give you my recommendation for a website build further down for growth. But I love WordPress. I love the theme Divi, which is like the best website builder. So we're adding website builders to WordPress. That's how popular it is. Whereas Squarespace is just a website builder, but that's what you have to use. So WordPress can allow for so much integration. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Christina, if you do not take personal information or take payments, is it really necessary for an SSL? Unfortunately, yes, because Google has made it an optional mandatory. And what I mean by that is when they first introduced a website that didn't have an SSL, what would happen is that it would give you a red unlock icon in the address bar that said this website is not secure. And that is a little misleading because yes, it's not secure, but it's also not harmful. So people, instead of actually proceeding with that website, would just hit the back button and not even go there. So it became mandatory to have an SSL. So that makes Google think, okay, so this person, to have an SSL, you have to verify your ownership, install it on there, and then, okay, that site's now more legit than others that don't have an SSL. So it does affect your rankings in the search engines, as well as people who aren't super technologically savvy and to understand why that icon isn't green but red, kind of scare people. So I would say it is mandatory because of that environment. Okay, well, Valerie, just feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you about your website. Samuel, what are the most effective ways to determine the functions you need, scheduling, analytics, customer tracking, to include in your website? Samuel, you know what I like to do? I like to just research. Just go out there, see what your competitors are doing. What do they have? So for example, you'll never see a moving company website without a quote form front and center. That's sort of like an industry standard, right? Because that's that one thing you want someone to do. But ultimately, that's really what your website's for. It's a digital environment, and you want someone to be able to go there, and you want a sale, right? How do you get them closer to that sale? And that's how you kind of build your experience. Also, your brand and your culture kind of keeps people on your website longer. They feel a connection with you, and then they're more likely to kind of fill out that form and go to that next step. So there's a lot of pieces that really help with that engagement. But I would start with what's expected of me in my industry. How can I do it better? Because I'm slightly competitive. And then what makes you proud, and start that way. All right, let's talk about hosting. Now, this is not for sites. Oh, hold on, I got one more question. Well played, Jill, well played. Can WordPress be put into a Shopify account then? No, Shopify is sort of like is like Squarespace, Wix, Weebly. They have their own platform that you have to use. You have to use your account on them. So you would either use Shopify or WordPress. Now, if you wanted e-commerce on WordPress, there's a couple different ones, but by far the most well-known and supported one is called WooCommerce. And this is a plugin that has a lot of other plugins. So I'm gonna go ahead and type this into the chat for you. It's WooCommerce. So it's a plugin you add, and then you can add on more plugins based on what you need. So for example, if you're doing only digital products, there's like help for that. If you're taking Stripe payments or PayPal payments, there's an add-on for that. A lot of them are free, but when you start doing like memberships and reoccurring donations, that's when you start kind of racking up a bill of like 100 to, and 100 to 500 a year to kind of keep that subscription going and updated. One other thing that's slightly more annoying about WordPress is that it updates a lot because technology is always changing and security, and they want to make sure that's all patched up. So you do need to go in and make updates, whereas, Shopify will handle all that for you. Okay. Okay, I think I nailed it. All right, moving on here, we have website hosting for custom sites like WordPress. So this will give you a bit more information, Jill, and anyone else who wants to use WordPress. Here's how it works. Okay, so in order to know what kind of hosting account you need, understand the terminology a bit. So most of the time, if you have one website, the startup is more than adequate. Now, this is a quick screenshot of a host I really prefer called SiteGround. And there's a link in here for you too, if you want that. So you get one website, 10 gigabytes web space. So great for photos and whatnot. Unmetered traffic. That means people can keep coming to your site over and over again. There's no limit. And I will admit that a lot of this is now standard. So if you see that there's like a metered traffic, you can kind of know that you're getting a more antiquated hosting account. And then, you just don't choose that hosting account. But free SSL is a big one. Now again, they say free email. Don't do it, guys. But I don't know. I don't know much about SiteGround's email, but all I know is I'd rather just go to Google or Outlook and go from there, because it integrates with so much stuff, Yes, so basically it's all saying these fancy things, but if you go to, I'm back up here. If you go to SiteGround, they have little tool tips here. So you can actually hover over it and get more information of what that means. And based on your needs, you can kind of decide what you want. But again, if you only have one website, go here. If you want to host more than one website, you want to go into the grow big category. Now, I have a hosting account with SiteGround, and we host all of our clients' websites. So I actually don't have a shared hosting account. I have a cloud hosting, which gives you more resources, and it's just like way more money. So instead of 15 bucks a month, which is standard for a hosting account, I pay like 150 a month or something for all those websites. So it can definitely get up there if you start hosting a bunch of websites. So yeah, so take a look at some of this stuff. But yeah, these are the big ones: unlimited websites, gigabytes of web space, unmetered traffic. 100,000 visits a month is really big. Is a lot of people. You're doing pretty good. And all this stuff is good. So as you can see, as it just gets bigger and bigger, the words get longer and longer. And for most people, this stuff doesn't really matter unless you're like a hosting company. So you can just sort of ignore most of this stuff. But yeah, that's how you know what the terminology means. And again, the starter package is usually just great. Compare it to this, and if you are getting a good deal, you'll know. The first year is really cheap, but then just make sure that you understand the next year would be 15 bucks a month. It is a bit higher than it used to be, but websites are doing more and they demand more resources. So definitely expect a price increase if you're getting a good hosting account. All right, here's my top hosting companies. And again, guys, you will get this presentation and you'll be able to click around on it. SiteGround, Flywheel, Media Temple, InHost, DreamHost. There's a lot of others too. I don't typically recommend GoDaddy for hosting custom CRM sites. I have been using GoDaddy for a long time, and they had some growing pains, and they were charging prices for resources that weren't good. So I ended up going to SiteGround instead. Usually, if I'm working on a WordPress site and they have a GoDaddy hosting account, I won't work with them because I know they're going to have trouble logging in. It's going to time out. It's going to like just not load. They're going to reach their memory maximum. It's just a disaster. I don't have any of those problems on SiteGround. I have used these other hosting accounts and they seem fine, but I know the most about SiteGround because that's what we use. All right, so if your website is sluggish, it could be your hosting account resources just hitting the max. You can optimize your website to encourage faster speed. And you can do that by reducing image sizes when you upload them, disabling any unused plugins, and installing a caching system. It's a a plugin that you have. All right, let's talk about simple CRMs. And these are the website builders that are really honestly great for startups. If someone comes to me and they're like, listen, I have $5,000, how do I spend my money? Depending on their industry and how they get their referrals, I might say, listen, pump all that money into your brand and then use a very inexpensive CRM like Wix or Squarespace to get started. And then when you need to grow, you can move it. So you have a lot of options when it comes to websites and how you spend your dollars. So I recommend these for people on a budget. Doesn't do that much, but you'd be surprised what they can do. So again, just check it out. And you know what? Don't be afraid to make 30 accounts. Don't be afraid to make an account on Squarespace or an account on Weebly, an account on Wix. So you can test them all before you decide which one you want to go with. You don't have to decide and then commit. You can date around a little bit and see, what feels good. The most popular builders, according to me, well, and the internet. One is Squarespace. Again, it's beautiful. They have beautiful layouts. They're very professional. And Keanu Reeves, was in a commercial. So what's better than that? Wix. Wix is pretty good. It's a bit more powerful than Squarespace, not as beautiful, but it is better for like larger websites. Shopify is great for e-commerce experiences. They're built for that. If you're not using e-commerce, I would not recommend Shopify. You're not going to be happy with that. And I recently found a really great website builder called Pixpa, which is great for photographers. And it was just so insane. Like you could upload your photos and they would put the watermark on there for you. You can like show galleries and sell prints and have a proofing gallery, and you paid per space, so you paid for like how many photos you had on there. So there's a lot of industry specific CRMs as well that you might be surprised by. The only bad thing about that is if you pick an industry specific web builder and it only has like, not that many templates, you're going to look the same as everyone else. So just keep that in mind. I usually pick designs that aren't in the industry. So if someone shows me a florist website in Divi, I'll be like, well, let's not use a florist website for a florist in Divi because 3,000 other websites have that. So, just be strategic with how you pick the templates. All right, more questions. Okay. Yes, I really like SiteGround too. The only bad thing about SiteGround is that they are on top of it. So they will update PHP versions. They'll let you know, but you got to make sure that it works with all your things. Regina, how can I make a business email 365 Microsoft? Well, I would just Google Microsoft 365 and set up an account, and it's usually about $12 a month, I think, per user, unless they change that. And you get all the sweet stuff. You get the Outlook, you get the Gmail. I'm sorry, not Gmail. You get Word, Excel, and all that stuff. And if you do the Google Suite, it's basically just their version of that. Jennifer says, I tried GoDaddy at first and they nickeled and dimed me for everything. they're kind of manipulators. They'll be like, hey, for $80 a year, you'll save 80% on your domain names, you know, and it's just like, does that really balance out or not? Yeah, I don't really like those selling tactics. Samuel says, I'm launching a website this week on Squarespace. When I get ready to move it to WordPress, do I have to change everything? Yeah, you can't just take your Squarespace and move it to WordPress. You have to rebuild it completely. So, and then you have to pick a theme and all that stuff. And honestly, it's if your website isn't too big, it should be okay. I mean, it's easy for me to say, right? I can make websites pretty quick, but just know that you have to rebuild it wherever you go. But again, if you're a startup and your website's beautiful and it does what you want, then that's all that matters. All right, Sean McGuire says, my partner bought our domain on Bluehost. Do you know if we would be able to host that domain on SiteGround? Yes, so Bluehost, I didn't know they just did domains, but you can edit the records on that domain to point to your hosting account on SiteGround, no problem. You would just change, I'll type this into the chat. This might be a little complex, but you would just change the A record for that to the SiteGround server IP address. That's what you would need to do to make it happen. Okay, let's see here. Sam asks, what should I consider when I move to run two websites on two different platforms? Well, just think of it as a new adventure. Think of it as starting over, picking a better theme with better functionality. You know, just go with it. It's a great way to grow because you don't have to add all the plugins when you switch, right? You can just grow into it. And different themes can do really cool stuff. So for example, Divi has a really cool infographic. So you can add like a pie, not a pie chart, yeah, like a pie, or like a counter, or like a stat bar, and they're all animated. So it can really, you know, make data feel more dynamic. So yeah, I would consult a designer to see, you know, what your industry standard is and how you can be better at it and make a cooler site. But otherwise, just think of it as a new experience. You're going to have to start over. Well, you'll still have your domain, of course, and you would just point your domain to the new hosting website when you're ready. Now, if you have your domain on Squarespace, I don't know if they'll let you keep the domain there because there's no web. Maybe you can. Then you just point it. Yeah, you could probably do that. You're probably okay. Some website, just be forewarned. Some hosts are like, yo, if your website isn't here, we don't want to host your domain records. So then what you have to do is go back to the registrar and put the name records back to that registrar so that you can then point it to the new host. So just be prepared for something like that to happen. You're welcome. What are the main items to keep in mind when one is coordinating multiple websites on different platforms? Organization, my man. I have LastPass and I love that to keep all my passwords in it. And also you can add notes to that. So if there is something a bit more complex about a setup, then I usually just write it down so that I can reference it later. It's really great, you know, because sometimes I'm like, okay, well, where is the domain hosted? Or where's the domain registered? Where is the website hosted? Where's their email? But if I keep a note of that, I will remember and be able to find it. But also, I have some tools that I'm going to show you guys where if you aren't sure where a website's hosted or where it's registered, there are some tools to be able to locate that to get you on the right path to kind of recovering those accounts if you lose that information. Yes, we love SiteGround support in their chat feature, Bob. Is one platform better than the other regards to analytics? I would say hands down WordPress if you use like an SEO plugin along with it. It's very formulaic, but a lot of SEO is the actual content itself. And depending how competitive your industry is, you may not need to kind of bolster it with more SEO. We would just need to research the keywords and see how competitive it is really. Okay. Let's see. I think Merrick is just talking to other people. Oh yeah, so for passwords, I use something called LastPass, and it's an extension where it's just a vault. And so all you have to do is remember one password, which is your master password, and it remembers all the other stuff for you. And it's just a lot easier to organize, I think. All right, we're going to move on to the tools. Let me see. Yep. Okay, awesome. Good questions, guys. You're keeping me on my toes today. Website security. All right, so this is going to talk a little bit about SSL, and I apologize, I can't remember who asked this question about the CSR. This is where the IT world and the web design world starts to blur, and I'm like, I don't know about all this. So I know how to set something up, but I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know what the ticket says. But so what's an SSL? It stands for Secure Socket Layer, which is why we don't call it that. And all it is like a secure tunnel that information transmits to. So let's say someone's on your website, they're buying a product, they're putting in their credit card information. What happens is when you hit send on that, you submit and you purchase, there is a secure tunnel that goes from here, from your website up here to your web server. And that transaction is secure and protected. The thing is that it doesn't protect the website from before the transaction or after the transaction. So once it gets to the server and before it gets to the server, that's still vulnerable. So SSLs are really good for just transmitting very private information. So before the SEO boost to the SSL, we really use it for e-commerce, of course. Medical companies use it because of HIPAA. You know, you're sending social security information, you're sending medical information. But now it's really required to have an SSL if you want to rank well and not scare your customers away, because there will be that stupid red block on there that just says this isn't secure. But yeah, if you go to a host that has free SSL, again, you can install that in just a click. All right. So again, even though you have an SSL, it's not going to prevent hackers from infecting your website. That's a different kind of security. All right. I know what you guys are thinking. Well, how do I prevent my website from getting hacked? Here are some really great tips. Now, we talked about how the SSL functions, right? Use strong passwords and use it at all the access points. What I mean by that is your domain account should have a unique password. Your hosting account should have a unique password. Your email accounts and any other website logins should have their own unique passwords. Now, if you're using a builder like Wix or Squarespace, they take care of that security, but you should still use strong passwords so that people can't, you know, hack into you. A lot of the hackers, what they do is you might get, maybe they hack a credit card company, which happens, right? They hack them, they get your email, right? So then they assume that your email is your username. Okay, and so over here they're plugging in your email, and then what they do is they start like bombarding the login with different password combinations, and they typically use ones that are popular. So if you're typing, you know, admin as your username and password, they're going to get in, and from there they can exploit your website. So having unique passwords and usernames is really key to not getting hacked. So if you have a custom site like WordPress, there are some plugins that will help your website from getting hacked, but the biggest one is just making sure all of your plugins, your themes are updated. You can do so with a click of a button, or a couple of buttons, I should say. Okay, Samuel asked a question. Sorry, Sam. Okay. All right, that's it. So if you have a custom WordPress site, security is your responsibility. And again, we can help you with that and show you what to do, but these are the plugins we recommend. Loginizer, what it does is if someone tries to log in like over and over again, after 3 failed attempts, it locks them out for a certain amount of time. So that prevents them from trying to guess all those common passwords. The second one is called WP URL hide, which means that it changes the login link. So then they can't even find the username and password field to log into. So that kind of takes that out of the equation. WordFence, a very good security plugin, but I will say it is a resource hog. So we typically, do Loginizer and WP URL hide as a combo, and WordFence for websites that are more at risk. And last but not least, you can have dual authentication, where every time you log into your website, you have to confirm on your phone, and that adds another layer of security as well. Any questions on security? Again, website builders, they handle all that for you. But if you're running your own custom website, which again, wow, it's so cool, guys. Like, I know it seems really hard, but if you get your website developed, then the designer will train you on how to use it, and you can just keep it going forever. If you want to see the cool stuff your website can do, go to our website. It might excite you. All right. Any questions on SSLs and security? Again, Wix and Squarespace, they'll install the SSL for you. You don't have to worry about that. But if you do have a custom site like WordPress, you will need that. And you can purchase it either where your domain lives or on your hosting account. I recommend on your hosting account. And the CSR request, that is, that's where you kind of like, I think, install the SSL. Sometimes you have to go and confirm some ownership stuff, and make sure your account information is right. And then it will, and once you verify your information, it will then allow you to install the SSL. Yes, of course. For sure, Nicole. Okay, let's talk briefly about email. I know I said this 20 times, but I can't say enough. Do not use the email that comes free with your hosting account. It's going to suck. You're not going to get email. And the reason for that is because they have policies that when your company sends out spam, or people are using it to send out spam, it flags entire IP addresses on a blacklist. So next thing you know, people aren't getting your emails because someone else on your hosting is like sending out crap. So trust me on that. Just use Gmail or Outlook. Top email companies. Okay. All right. Okay. A little bit redundant here, guys, but Google Workspace. Hopefully it's still called that. G Suite. Again, $6 to $18 a month per user. Office 365, probably the same. Their prices might change, like, $6 to $20 a user. And if you absolutely don't want to spend money on email, I would say Gmail's probably the most professional of the least professional emails. If you're using AOL, if you're using Yahoo, it just looks like you're not with it, like maybe you might not be the best person for the job because you're on this antiquated system. So it's amazing like what your technology can communicate to your customers. So definitely find a custom domain name. Again, if you're not using a custom domain name, it kind of looks like you're going to be around temporarily. Doesn't feel like you're in it. It just feels like you're kind of winging it. And that can make people feel uncomfortable, even on a subconscious level. So if you're going to do this, do it right, be professional, get a custom email. And the Microsoft and Google will walk you through that process of doing it. But yeah. Okay. So here's my recommended setup, and it's built for growth. So here's what I use for my personal company. I use Google Workspace. I have Google Voice as well, and I've had that for so many years. It integrates all beautifully. I use Google Domains to buy my domain name. There are some extensions Google doesn't support, and usually you can go to GoDaddy for that. GoDaddy has lots of extensions. For example, I remember Google didn't have .Sweden. So, if you want a Swedish website, maybe go someplace else. Hosting account. Now I pay about 100, well, most people pay 180 a year for their hosting, and that's sort of average right now if you want a really fast, good website. And again, the SSL, that's included on SiteGround automatically. And the web app I use on that SiteGround server is WordPress. And that allows me to do so many custom things to make my website awesome. All right. Samuel, why do I not recommend network solutions? Probably for the same reason I don't recommend GoDaddy. They've been around a while. I wasn't happy with their packages or prices. And I don't recall you being able to upgrade your services. So with Bluehost and network solutions, I kind of felt like they were like, oh, well, you need more resources. Well, you better like tone down your website versus, oh, we'll give you more memory. So I felt like they were kind of stifling innovation during that time, but it might have changed. But whenever I see their name, I'm like, eh. But again, it might be unfounded at this point. You're welcome. Let's see here. Samuel, why do you not? Okay, Merrick, use your domain name. It's the most professional. When you say AOL, I can hear the modem dialing or the yelling when someone calls and kicks you off the internet, 10 cents a minute. And you're like, no. Oh, how the internet has come. Merrick asked, when building with WordPress, do you have to pay for templates or do you code the entire site? There's lots of free themes. When we say templates, let's talk about themes. So the theme is like the overall look, like a skin around your website, right? Now, themes are sometimes built with cool functionality. So for example, we have a radio station website where at the top, there is a radio player. And when you click on different pages, the player always stays here. So you can listen while you're browsing. So that's a cool like theme feature for that particular client. And then from there, we can talk about how to actually build the content and we can introduce a builder. Now the builders, some of them have free versions, some of them are paid. I use Divi. I have a yearly subscription to Divi and I can do unlimited websites, but it's like $300 and some change a year. That's a little pricey for some people, especially if they're doing it as a hobby, but I find that to be the best builder of all time. And you can use Divi's builder with themes other than Divi. I haven't had great success with it, so I wouldn't bank on that. So yeah, so I would say if you're going to do something, I always pay for the pro version. So Elementor, for example, is a very common builder, and I think it's like $50 a year if I remember right, which is more affordable than Divi, but Divi can do a lot more. It can be overwhelming initially, so just pick the one that that is easy for you to work with. But Elementor or Divi as a page builder kind of replaces like Squarespace's interface. Think of it like that. So you're just adding things on a WordPress to make it Squarespace, make it Wix, but better. Okay, guys. So I whipped this up for you last minute. So I hope my links still work. But these are common questions and obstacles that sometimes I run into with my clients. They might know, where do I buy my domain name and how much does it cost? We kind of covered that, right? Shouldn't my domain, website, and email be with the same company? No. What host should I use? You now know that question. What platform should I build my website on? And the two are custom, which is WordPress-ish, or builder, which is like Wix or Squarespace. If you know you purchased a domain, but you don't know where it is, I have a tool for you. So I'm going to come back to some of these questions, but actually, let me just read through them. So what setup do I recommend for domain hosting and email? I'm going to show you that. If you're concerned about security, how do you know if you're secure? I'm going to show you that too. If you let your domain name expire, how do you get it back? That's just a little bit of praying and hoping that no one bought it out from under you and is trying to resell it. Do I need an SSL? And how do I get one? We talked about that. Here's a big question. Someone set my website up for me and I don't know how to get control over it or where to start. And last but not least, why is my website so slow? So I have some great tools in the following pages that will go over how you can find this information out. So if you go to whois.com and you click on Whois and enter your website, you're going to get some information about it. You're going to see the registrar. So this is where you bought the domain name, right? So this is great if you're locked out and you don't know where you bought your domain name. This is a great step. It tells you where your name servers are, which again is where your domain record is. Now these, again, the domain registrar and the name servers can be at different places. The name servers don't always have the company name in it. Sometimes they're random, like domain control, which is usually GoDaddy. And here's just some lingo to kind of let you know what all this means. So when you see status client transfer prohibited, what this means is that your domain is locked, which is by default. In order to move your domain to another company, you have to unlock it first and then transfer it. So all of this is pretty standard. Secondly, we can use something called Site Checker, and I use this to find where my website's hosted. So here's some examples here. You'll notice that this example, the pasbdc.org, you'll see that it's hosted on a company called Linode. The name servers are siteprotection.com. This is where the records live. This is the web server technology it's running. And you'll notice that on the right is my brand's one.design. And you'll notice that it doesn't tell you any information, and that's because I have a private registration. So if you run into this where it's not really telling you anything, it's because the privacy is on, and that might make it more difficult. Last but not least, I have a great reference here. It's called Built With, and this allows you to go to a website, add your domain name, and it will load in everything that makes that website. It will tell you, hey, it was built with WordPress. It was built with this theme. It has these scripts on it. It's integrated with MailChimp, So many things will come up, and this really helps you learn, what a website's built on. And it will tell you if it's WordPress, Squarespace, Wix, etc. So this can really help tremendously when getting your account, especially if it's lost. So I think that's it, guys. We don't have too much time. We have 4 minutes, but you can schedule a call with me. If you want to pick my brain for an hour, let me know. So click on this link, you'll make a call with me. And if you want some extra help, join our Facebook group. We really help, businesses and professionals just, for pretty much a lot of things. So feel free to kind of join our community. And yes.
Yeah, we nearly. I just want.
I know that's a lot. I hope you guys had fun.
Yeah, just a quick one to my wonderful attendees. I did posted a 30-second survey about today's webinar. Remember we at Temple SPDC, we always cherish your feedbacks, even as it helps us to improve on the services we provide to you guys at a low cost. So kindly take 30 seconds of your time and help us to fill out the 30-second survey I just posted. If you, Jen, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Now, guys, if you remember from the onset, I did say today is a wonderful day. And of course, I'm sure each and every one of you can attest to what I said earlier on. We had a great presentation. I like the way everything flowed. We had like a lot of questions today, and it was more or less like an interactive section. And that was cool. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny.
My pleasure. This is always one of my favorite presentations.
The pattern and that, yeah. Before we wrap it up, I just want to use this opportunity to also thank my fellow team members in Temple SPDC. Without them, we wouldn't have been here to have this wonderful presentation. Thank you guys once again for your wonderful encouragement and putting one or two things in order for us to have this wonderful time. Without much ado, I think we'll just call it a day, because from what I'm seeing from the chat list, it's been thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. Lastly, thank you guys, and do enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for coming. Bye.
Yes, please. Bye.